So clarity, I really am in the clarity business because clarity is really what my highest excitement is.
Yes.
And from being a lawyer, I moved to executive coaching. And my question is, I want to talk more about the non-physical part. And I'm afraid about the response.
Not a good place to be. Because your guidance is saying to you in that fear, your guidance is saying to you what? What's your guidance saying to you?
That it's wrong, it's bogus.
Your guidance is saying to you that this thought about what somebody else thinks about what you know is not beneficial to you, and that you care too much about what they think. We started to say to you before you went further into the conversation that this is the perfect combination of law, which is apparently rigid but not really. There's so much more flexibility in it than anybody realizes. That's why it drives everyone crazy. And alignment, the very thing that you are worried about is because you are somewhat dealing with those who are more rigid in nature. They have been studying and studying and studying and have come to many conclusions about how things are. And they are perhaps the least flexible body of people on the planet, next to scientists. And so philosophy is way on the other end of that, isn't it? Because with philosophy, the scientists abhor philosophers. They put them in the category of the crazy ones because there is so much desire, or really a sort of perceived need, to establish something as fact, as unchangeable fact, to use that unchangeable fact as the guideline by which we will make all of our decisions. Where what we are teaching and what life has shown you is that nothing is unchanging, everything is changing, and the desire moves it all forward. And so if we were standing in your physical shoes and we were wanting to win over these more rigid, less flexible minds to understanding who they really are, getting them into that flow of receiving inspiration, we would start by acknowledging how laws have shifted and how they are continually changing. And while they change slowly because they need to bring so many people along with them in agreement about the change, that still there is a distinct and notable, trackable evolution of those changes. And then once you sort of feel like you have them moving with you a little bit in that way, then we would say to them, and you know, everything that has ever moved forward and everything that has ever been surprising, where there's a surprise outcome, comes because within the framework of what is, someone steps outside of the framework of what is and receives an inspiration to take it to a new place. And in this business of law, it must be to a new logical place. And now we want to tell you the best part of all about this. There is nothing more logical than this vibrational based universe. This is not something that is changing. Those of you who have been listening to us in the way that Esther has been translating it for us for all of these years have found not one inconsistency in anything that has ever been said in all of these 30-something years. And that's because the basis of it is stable, but the way it manifests is ever changing. And isn't the law a bit that way as well? So that's the way we would approach it. Appeal to their logic. And you will have the vocabulary and the inspiration to do that. And don't try to figure it out all at once. Wait for it in the moment. It is our promise to you that we were not up in Esther's beautiful suite dictating to her the details of this gathering. This has not been pre-decided or rehearsed. This is something that is inspired from the ever-moving combination of energy that are happening in this dynamic place right here and now, you see. And that's how life always is. So all that we're encouraging, and certainly they would understand it, don't you want the basketball player to be in the zone? And can't you tell when he is and can't you tell when he isn't? And haven't you seen him stand and shoot a three-pointer after a three-pointer after a three-pointer after a three-pointer until you believe he cannot ever miss? And then don't you sometimes see him in a mode where no matter how much he tries, Esther will say, who put the lid on that basket? It's like nothing will go in. There's a curse on that basketball hoop. Nothing will go in. Nothing will go in. They're not tuned in, tapped in, turned on. They've let something get them out of sync. And so isn't it true with everyone? Isn't there an inspired surgeon? And isn't there an inspired preacher? And isn't there an inspired lawyer? Isn't there an inspired everyone? And isn't that word indicating what it really is, coming forth from within, from that broader awareness? So this is a wonderful environment in which you are working for these reasons. They are accustomed to focusing, and they know what focus brings. They like the feeling of clarity. They can feel when something's shifting. They can feel when something is turning. They can feel when a case is turning. They can feel when they get an idea, and they can feel the momentum of that idea. Even though this is a rigid group, because they are thinkers, they will understand your logic once you present it to them with the clarity that you often find. Yeah.
But you would leave out the source part, the source energy part in the beginning.
We would never leave it out. That's like leaving us out.
Yeah, that's what my struggle was. Yeah.
And if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would never leave it out either, because that's the larger part of you.
Yeah.
So we'd use words like, I feel inspired to say, or I feel an impulse to tell you this, or my instincts tell me this, or my gut feeling is this. You've been using these words all along.
Yeah.
I intuitively know this. I have a hunch about this. They understand all of that. Some years ago, Jerry and Esther had some chickens, and the chickens were bothered by the skunks, and the skunks like to eat the eggs and sometimes like to eat the chickens. And so Jerry rigged up this wonderful way that he could catch the skunks without harming them and carry them to a faraway land, which they affectionately named Skunk Holler. They would set the skunks free, and they would sing "Born Free" as the skunks would run off into the bushes. But they needed a way to haul the skunks, so they bought an old truck, and the old truck was so terrible. It had been wrecked by a young man who had banged it into everything, and there was not an inch on the truck that was not damaged. And so then they decided that Esther couldn't stand to drive around in the truck, so they found a truck that was all the same pieces, and they took it to a man, and they said, can you take this truck apart and put it back together with these good pieces and then make it beautiful? So they painted it British racing car green, the most beautiful truck. And the man who was putting it back together kept looking at a wheel. He kept looking. And Jerry said, what's bothering you about this wheel? And he said, I don't know. He said, I've replaced everything on it. I've repacked the brake, I've replaced the wheel, I've replaced the tire. I don't know what it is. And about a month later, Jerry and Esther were driving the truck, pulling a trailer, and the axle broke on that wheel. And Jerry said, Charlie knew about that. He intuitively knew that something was off about that wheel. Didn't cause any problem. In fact, they'd driven it 300 miles that day, and it broke on the freeway right in front of Charlie's shop. Timing is everything, isn't it? But what we are getting at is everyone has these hunches. This is not something that's weird. And you can't know about hunches without knowing about source energy. And you can't know about the zone without knowing about source energy. And you can't know about intuition or inspiration without knowing about source energy. And everybody has
vibration.
Everybody has those experiences. Yeah. Enough?
And the first step on my journey took me through the philosophy. And now I keep thinking about it again, about these philosophers, how much they already knew.
Yes.
And I was thinking to maybe introduce this as a bridge again.
Follow your inspiration. And what you will discover is that you will find effective ways as you go. Don't try to figure it out all at once. That's what's giving you fear.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out how and where and when and who. Just talk about why. Why? Because I want to teach something that is at the basis of everything that everyone needs to know. I want to teach something that is steady and that is duplicatable and teachable and demonstratable. How wonderful it is to have a philosophy that is backed up 100% by the laws of the universe. How easy it is to teach something that there's not a shred of evidence to the contrary of it anywhere. It's an easy job.
Thank you.
Really good. Yeah.